I didn't think they were going to get this pissed off.
Just shut up and keep driving!
Holy jumping space worms, Batman! Today on the Inforunner, we are going to be talking about jump point sizes and the important implications thereof. I'm Dasein was here.
And this is Hayes.
So, today, we're going to be talking about the different sizes of jump points. Currently, if you go on and you look at the Arc star map, which I highly recommend you do, you can see there are 3 different sizes, and there's some very important implications of this that Hayes was actually talking to me about the other day.
We know there's going to be 3 different wormhole sizes, small, medium, and large. And by sort of categorizing what ships are already out and their sort of sizes, you can sort of figure out which ships are going to be fitting through which size jump points, sort of like pigeonholing them. And from these categories that we split them up into, you can make a lot of deductions as about how that's going to work and how big a ship can actually fit through a various size wormholes.
Well, the thing is, CIG has been very tight-lipped on what actually constitutes a small, medium, and large jump point. And this is actually a really good thing, being as if they talk too much about it, they're going to paint themselves into a corner, being as all these ships are in flux with size and shape and all that the fleet has evolved and is totally different from when they originally probably envisioned the jump point system.
If you take from a couple of examples, you can already define what a jump point is going to be. I mean, look at the Vandal Scythe and the Vandal Glaive. These are the premier fighters, longer ranged, that are going to be going around and doing force rejection for Vandal. They're the smallest fighters you can get outside of a blade, which is only a short range carrier based sort of a ship. It does not make sense for a Scythe and a Glaive to only fit through a medium sized jump point. But yet the Scythe and the Glaive are actually wider than, say, a Constellation, than a Vanguard, probably fairly comparable to a Caterpillar. And so by judging from these sizes of these other ships and sort of comparing them against each other, you can sort of constitute that if this ship fits, then other ships of the same sort of front cross-sectional size has to fit as well.
Well, and even to the same point, the Vandal had a giant, freight train. Quite literally, this giant freighter that was very small and narrow. And that does actually help out with the idea that these wormhole sizes are going to be very important. And just think about it this way. This particular ship illustrates this point really well. So take a sheet of paper and fold it in half. Now take a pencil and poke a hole through it, and then open up the paper. That's kind of the example of a wormhole being able to quickly let you traverse from point A to point B really, really fast. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a long pencil or a short pencil, as long as it can fit through that hole, as long as the diameter of that particular pencil is small enough to fit through.
Oh, this is right. It sort of shows that it doesn't matter how big the ship is. It doesn't matter how much mass that ship has. All it matters is that ship will fit through that hole. And so the whole idea that, a Freelancer or a Cutlass will be the smallest ships that will fit through jump points. Yeah, maybe if it's only the frontal cross-sectional area, but because these ships have grown in size and many other ships have been added to the lineup, it now has to include any other ship that is also just as large from the front. Now, saying that if a Constellation is now the fattest ship that can fit through a wormhole, you can now define every and which way ships that can fit through a small wormhole. Like a Retaliator might also fit, or a Caterpillar might fit. I mean, look at the Caterpillar. It's so long and narrow. And it didn't do this just for the style. This was by design. It's only a little bit fatter than the Constellation. In fact, it's just as fat as a Vanguard or close to a Sabre. This ship was made to fit through the smallest size jump point, and it might be the largest one.
Well, and it would totally make a lot of sense, being as the ships that can fit through a small wormhole are limited in their ability to carry cargo. The top three being the Hull B at 384 SCU, the Caterpillar at 512 SCU, and the Taurus at 243 SCU. It sets a hard floor until you hit larger capital ships and larger ships that are over 1,000 SCU, and that really would restrict the larger carrying capacity ships to your medium to large jump points.
Oh, this is right. You got ships like Starfarer, the Carrack, the Hull C, Genesis, Crucible, Orion, 890 Jump, Merchantman. They would all go through medium jump points. And it would make sense because their capacity to do cargo, to do industry is that much larger than all those ships that sort of cut off where small jump points sort of end. What would really be interesting is if the Polaris fits through a medium jump point.
Yes, that's really interesting, being as the fact is, the Polaris has to be able to fit through the medium jump point. And the reason I say that is because that is going to be your ship for force projection, being as anything larger is going to have to be larger. You're looking at the Idris and the Javelin. You really don't have anything in that escort capital ship size vessel to be your force projection outside of then saying your Constellation class or your Retaliators are going to be your force projection on your medium cargo lanes.
People are going to be buying 890 jumps just so they can escort. It's a bit ridiculous. There's such a large jump going from, say, a Constellation or 890 jump to a Polaris. It makes sense that Polaris has to sort of fit that gap as the largest ship that can go through a medium jump point. Speaking of medium jump points, the Hull D, like obviously it's larger than a Polaris width-wise, but if you collapse that down, you could probably still fit that into a medium jump point. Once you sort of collapse the spindles or maybe take a third of the cargo to sort of make it less wide, the Hull D may also fit in to a medium jump point. The Endeavour looks like it will fit into a medium jump point as long as the modules aren't too big or if you don't put any modules on at all. But the larger modules like the Biodome and the Hangar and the Particle Accelerator would probably be just that little bit too big to fit.
Well, the thing is, this brings up the point that the entire Hull series collapses. There's literally no reason for the Hull series to collapse into a smaller vessel if it's not for the fact that you're going to want it to collapse down into a small vessel so it can go through smaller jump points to get to wherever you're going to pick up your cargo. Then you take the long way around to deliver your cargo. And then you collapse yourself back down when you're empty to go quickly to the next location where you're going to be picking up more cargo. It doesn't make any sense. Something like the Hull E is so large that it's probably not going to be landing on planets anyway. There's no need for it to. That you're wasting all that extra mechanical space and everything and the ability to fold, where you could probably use that same space or have hardier connections than your collapsible type.
It makes more sense for the hulls to collapse so that they can have a smaller cross-sectional from the front so they can fit through a size down in the wormhole structure. I mean, that makes more sense than trying to land on a planet. There's not much use to land on a planet if you can't take the cargo back up when you decide to get back off it again. That just doesn't make sense. But if you're going to collapse a Hull E, and suddenly it can go from a large jump point to a medium jump point, and then maybe you can have a bunch of Hull Cs ferrying cargo through the jump point on the other side and then reloading it on the Hull E. That would make a lot of sense, especially if you were avoiding 6 or 7 other jump points to go to a shorter route. Or perhaps the route you wanted to take through large jump points was through dangerous space, like Vandal space. And by sort of going through, collapsing and reloading onto the Hull E through like ferrying with Hull Cs, you then avoid going through dangerous space. These are all things that make an incredibly large amount of sense. And in the same sort of vein, that means if you collapsed on a Hull D, maybe it might fit through a medium jump point as well. Because I think the Hull D is probably fully loaded. That's going to be a large jump point. But then, same for the Hull C, maybe a collapsed Hull C suddenly looks small enough to fit through a small jump point. Maybe not with any cargo, but still, Same idea, you can ferry the cargo through.
Well, and it opens up a whole new job, being as just imagine if at certain jump point areas they actually have an entire ferry service there, and your job is basically, or your org's job is to quickly transfer cargo back and forth from this area just to make it more efficient than going all the way around. So there are so many options that you have there.
The last point I'd like to touch on is the significance of small, medium, and large jump points. It sort of allows CIG to have different classes of ships that can take different classes of cargo. And so that means the little man isn't going to miss out because he can take a much shorter route as opposed to skipping a few jumps. So he can better take his supply to the demand that larger ships can't do. And they've scaled this in 3 different levels. This makes it viable for smaller ships, medium ships, and sort of bigger ships to compete against each other. It should still be more efficient to do a larger ship, but it doesn't mean that it's not wholly unprofitable or unfair to try and compete in some way against those different levels.
And the thing is, if you just take a look at the star map, you can also notice that as soon as you go in there and you just start clicking on the jump points, you can actually see when you have them all selected, there's a lot of options. And then you take out the smaller ones. You notice there's a lot less options. And then if you take out the medium ones, you barely have any jump points, and in some cases, no system connectivity. So these different sizes are going to be very important on the way the economy works with where can ships travel. Are there going to be certain jump spots where you have the big hullys dropping things off to a medium jump point where they get unloaded and you're getting paid by whoever the hulley is to deliver it the rest of the way?
I think this also ties into the idea that you have these small jump points and they can give you small little jumps, but it's not necessary. I think like 2/3 or even 3/4 of the jump points are mostly medium and large jump points. But if you just include just small jump points by themselves for small ships, they have all the options, and they have a couple extra little shortcuts that they can do. But if you look at large ships, they're very restricted in what they can do, and this will be a large problem, which is I think how the hulls get around it. They're going to get around with those collapsing structures. But when you start looking at the medium jump points, medium jump points is probably the sweet spot where it's at, where they can get around everywhere with not too many jumps. And I think going forward, that's going to be where the majority of trade's going to be.
Well, guys, are we completely off with what we're thinking with jump points? What ships do you think will be able to fit through the jump points, and which ones do you think won't? May surprise you. Just take a look at the Reclaimer.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that Reclaimer. Is it a medium jump point? Is it going to be a large one? Would like to hear you. I think I'm 50-50 on that one. If you have any comments, please put it in the box below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This was Hayes.
And Dazan was here, and as always,
catch you around in the verse.